Hi, and welcome to our first video on using Enovia for collaboration and project management. Enovia, like CATIA, is one of the tools available to you within the 3D Experience program. It's going to help you collaborate and manage your project so that you can stay on top of all of the tasks that you have to complete in order to complete your project on time. We're going to be covering some of the benefits that you can receive by using Enovia to manage your project. In this video, we're going to focus on task management, which is going to include keeping an eye on the status of your project, as well as scheduling and assigning tasks to team members. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at this example project that I've created, just so that you can get an idea of what you're going to have available to you once you've completed this video. So looking at this page, this is the project status page. Now I'm looking for my project, which I've named the demo project, just keeping an eye on all of the analytics that is going to help me stay on top of everything. So looking at this, I have my status section, which is covering the number of tasks that I've completed on time, whether or not I have any late days, any tasks that have slipped behind schedule, any members who are overloaded, milestones that I've missed, etc. This is also keeping an eye on the top level tasks, the main tasks that I have to complete my project, as well as giving me pie charts showing me tasks that I've completed and certain tasks that I might have overdue that need some additional attention. This is also showing me tasks that are due this week, this month, or in the next 30 days, tasks that are overdue, and even looking at things like deliverables, which I can create, or critical tasks. I have a simplified Gantt chart here that is showing the phases of my project and my completion level of each project. So looking at it, each of these phases here is shown with 2 bars. I have today's date marked on this plot. The first bar here, this kind of middle shade, is the planned duration of the concept. I have a darker bar that's showing the actual expected duration of this phase. Notice that based on my current progress, it's expecting this phase to take a little bit longer than I had planned, so I might have to increase the amount of effort I'm putting into my concept development. And it's also showing me with this lightest bar the current status. So looking at this, I've probably completed about 70% of this phase. Now even though I'm a little bit ahead of schedule, I still have a little bit more to complete, and based on my progress, I'm going to need all of that time. I can get the same analytics on these other bars once I get into those phases. And then down at the bottom I have a burn down plot, which is basically showing the number of tasks I have left on this project, as well as the planned date of completion. So if you notice here, I'm actually a little bit behind schedule. I need to complete another task to get back in line with my planned burn down line here. We can even go in and look at the specifics of the Gantt chart. If I go into my schedule section here, I can see each of the tasks that I have assigned. These are each of the phases here, and I can expand each of these by clicking on the plus, or just expand all at once with this button. Notice here I have a completed task. I have a task that's in work, 75% complete. I have a task that's late, and a couple others that I should be working on, though I haven't marked any progress for. And if I go over to the Gantt chart section now, we can see the actual timeline that I created for my project. Again, I can come up here, I can expand all, and get the individual tasks. Now I haven't filled out all of these phases, but you notice here I have tasks. These are marked in blue here. I have milestones, which are specific deadlines that I'm expected to meet on this project. I have the phases marked in gray and the overall duration of the project. Now we're going to create a Gantt chart very similar to this so you can plan out your project. Now one of the major questions we get is why we should do project management within 3D Experience. And there's a number of reasons for this. One of the main ones is simply for convenience. The information is going to always be there for you as you move through your project, always be right there in front of you, so you can always have a good idea of where you should be in your project. It's very common to create a Gantt chart, create a plan at the beginning of your project, especially in academic projects, and not use that information later on, or realize partway through the project that you're far behind your planned schedule. This is going to help you keep a better eye on everything. There are widgets available that you can have on your dashboard so that every time you log into your project, you're going to get an idea of what tasks you should be focusing on right now. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to create a project of our own. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to jump back to the home page. So let's go ahead and get started. First things first, I need to show you how to get into Enovia. So I'm going to jump back over to my dashboard. And what you want to do is you want to look for the social and collaborative apps up at the top, which are mostly going to be Enovia. Notice Enovia is marked by this orange bar on the bottom of each of these apps, just like CATIA is marked in blue. You're going to scroll down to the bottom and you're going to look for project management. Now this will be a great app to have in your favorite apps. If you have access to more than one 3D Experience platform, make sure you click on the side arrow and select the platform that you want to be working in. Most likely you're only going to have one though, so you can just select this app and it's going to go ahead and open within your web browser. Now one of the major differences between Enovia and CATIA is that CATIA is a native app which gets installed on your computer and has to launch from your hard drive, where Enovia is a web app, which means that it can just launch within your browser. This is a great benefit to Enovia because it means that you can run this on many machines that wouldn't be able to handle the native CATIA apps. So let's go ahead, I'm going to clear this welcome window and let's get started in here. Notice this first page, this is my projects page, is listing all of the projects that I've created, all the projects that I'm assigned to, with their current status. Notice this second one here is late, it's behind schedule. It was supposed to be completed on July 19th and it's now the 27th. And this is that demo project we were looking at earlier. It's not behind schedule, it's not late, it's not completed, so I don't have any mark here. I also have a current phase section here that's showing the phase of the project that I'm in. Now most likely you're only going to be working on one project at a time as a student, so you're not going to need to look too much at this screen. But the important thing is that this is where we go to create projects. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select this menu, which is going to hide most of your useful tools on every page in Enovia. And I'm just going to create a new project from scratch. Now notice I can also create product lines, different products and builds, and assign projects to those. But again, we're only going to focus on one project at a time. So I'm going to name this My Project. And let's just move down through the fields here. So I can create a product date and type. The type you're just going to leave as project space. The project date is either going to be today's date, if we're going to be focusing on when the project begins, or it will be the due date of the project if we focus on when it ends. We can add a description. Notice that only those fields marked in red are actually necessary to complete in order to create this project. I can come down here and right now it's marked we're going to schedule it from the start date and it's going to be completed as soon as possible. That means that the project date is going to be today, and we want it completed just as soon as all the tasks can be completed. Now that's going to be great for what we create right now, but if you wanted to do it by the due date of the project, we can say finish date and as late as possible, and then I would come in here and select the end date of my project from this field. But I'm just going to leave it as the start date. Here I could import a calendar from a different section of 3D Experience. You're likely not going to have any calendars to worry about here. And I could also assign it to a specific business unit or program within my company if I had multiple groups working under me. We of course don't as students, so I'll just go ahead and select OK, and it's going to create that project for me. Alright, so here is my new project. Notice it's 0% completed, and essentially there's just nothing located within this project, but here's that same status page. Now the first thing I'm going to do is not go straight into the schedule and start creating tasks. I actually want to go ahead and make sure my team has all been included on this project. So I'm going to come down to the People section at the bottom of this left side. And one thing to keep in mind is instead of working through maybe a file explorer where you're moving down through levels, this whole program just works like a web browser. So I'm just jumping between web pages here. Can go to the My Project page, the People page, and I'm always just going to be jumping between those. I even have a home button if I want to go back to the Projects page where we created this project in the first place. Okay, so let's look at the People. Alright, so right here I'm just getting an overview of everyone involved with my project, which of course right now is just me. I'm the leader of the project and I have no project role. But what we're going to want to do is we want to add our team. So in order to do that, I'd come up here to this Actions menu and just select Add Member. And it's basically going to send me to a search page that's going to pull up all of the individuals who have access to my collaborative space. Again, the collaborative space I'm working on is marked up here. That's the demo collaborative space that I'm in. And these are all the individuals. There's 460 people who have access to this collaborative space. And I could come in and search for an individual, find them on this page. Notice the people here are marked not by their names, but by their usernames that they have in 3D Experience. So you're going to need to have those from your team, though most likely the only people who have access to your collaborative space are going to be your team, and you might be able to just come up here and say select all. Otherwise, I can come in here and just select them, just like this. Okay, now I don't actually want to add anyone to this demo project that we're working on, so I'll hit cancel here. Now if I had added them, I would have a nice list here that gives me an overview of everybody's access level and everybody's project role. So let's look at some of these fields. We have the members' names, their organization, their access level, and this is something we are actually going to be able to edit. The access level has to do with whether or not I'm able to edit the material on this page. There are essentially two access levels that you'll deal with on this page. The two are leader and reader. And the difference between the two is that a leader has the ability to actually edit these tasks and project management information, while a reader is able to access and read it, but won't actually have that editing right. So essentially this could be in a situation where you have a team lead or a team manager, someone who has responsibility for the Gantt chart, this information. They may have leader access and the other members of your team may only have reader access unless you want to give them the ability to edit the information as well. The project role has to do with the role that you serve on your team. And I'll actually open this up so we can look at this by selecting this Enable Edit pencil button at the top. Now this is going to be available to you on every page that you're looking at. And essentially what it does is it allows me to come in and change these editable fields. So coming back to the project role, I can select a role for this member of my team. So I could make myself the project lead if I'd like. I can make myself a manager, design engineer, etc. The project role has nothing to do with the amount of information you're able to see or even the things that you're able to edit. What the project role actually does is it creates a position for this member of my team that will be linked to all of the tasks assigned to that position. So I could go through and instead of assigning individual tasks to specific members of my team, I could assign those tasks to the role that that person fills on my team. And this is useful for two reasons. First, it saves me some trouble of trying to figure out who's who on my team, allowing me to simply assign tasks to the role, which will be filled by a person later on. It also gives me the ability to keep tasks assigned to individual positions on the team, even if those positions are more fluid and are going to be filled by different people throughout the course of my project. So on a project that takes several years, where individuals might be assigned as a project lead or a design engineer partway through the project, and then taken off later and replaced by others, I can move the project role and automatically reassign all of those tasks to the new person. This is an incredibly useful aspect of this page. So let's look a little bit about how editing these roles looks. I'm going to go ahead and assign myself the project lead. I can select off of that field, and now notice this has gone bold. When an item goes bold, it means that it's new to the page. But I actually haven't saved that change into my page. I have to come up here and select the Save button if I'm sure that that is a change that I want to make. At any point, if I decide I don't like the changes I had made to any page, I can just come up here and select Cancel. But I'm going to hit Save now. What it's going to do is it's going to actually activate that information. So I am now officially assigned as the project lead on this project. I can also come in here and select this and change it to something else. I'll become the program manager and select off of that. This time notice it's gone bold, showing the new information, and it's showing the old information in red. It's going to keep an eye on that old information until I've decided to make my change permanent. One thing with Enovia is you're going to have to keep an eye on that Save button, because if I ever come off of this page and jump to another part of my project or close this tab, without saving, I may lose that information, so I'm going to make sure I save that. And now I've been assigned as the program manager. Alright, now I'm ready to go ahead and start creating tasks for my project. So I'm going to come up here to the Schedule section of Enovia, and it's going to pop up this little overview of my project, including the progress, percent completed, etc. And right now you'll notice it's just showing that I start and I end on the same day. The reason it's doing that is it's waiting for me to put in tasks to define the length of this project. Remember, when I defined this project, I simply said it should be completed as soon as possible. Well, with no tasks that have any duration within this project, as soon as possible means instantly. So let's go ahead and let's make sure we start adding some material to this project. Now there are essentially 3 ways that I can add a task or any other item to my project. The first one, I can select that project, and I can come up here to the Actions tab and come down here to Add Tasks and insert a subtask into this project. I'm not going to do that because I want to show you some of the other things that I can add to a project. The second way is with these fields here. I can come in here and select the type of item I want to add. In this video, we're only going to really be covering tasks, milestones, and phases. We're not going to be worrying about gates at this time. A task is simply an item to be completed. A milestone is some sort of deadline or test or other individual item that should be completed by some certain date that we're working up to. And a phase is just a portion of the project. And that's going to really be the first thing I want to put in this project, is I want to split it up into individual phases to be completed by certain dates. The third way would actually be to come over to the Gantt chart tab here at the top. And in this video, we're only really going to be jumping between these 2 tabs. And I can come and right-click on any item in this Gantt chart and have it add a subtask, a phase, a milestone, a gate, etc. But I want to come back and I actually want to use the second method because it's simply very efficient. So I'll go ahead and select my project, come up here and I'm going to add a phase. I want to add 3 phases to my project, and then I'm going to select this button, which makes sure that the phases that I'm adding are part of this project. I don't want to add them above this project in this hierarchy. So I'm going to select Add as Sub Features, and I'm going to let that load. Alright, there now are the 3 phases of my project. They're automatically added in. They've auto-generated names for themselves. They have an ID, the type is phase. These are shown as preliminary because I haven't started them yet. And it's automatically created a duration. So let's go ahead, and we don't want to keep this name because that's not very informative. So the first thing I want to do is come up here and enable edit again. This little pencil button is going to be very useful to you in managing the information here. So I'm going to enable edit, and now you notice there's a little triangle on each of the things that it's allowing me to edit. And notice because of this first triangle, it's showing me I can edit the name. Now I don't want to select the name itself. That's going to send me into a new tab that offers me more specific information about this phase. But I'm just going to click just off the name, but still in that box, and it's now going to allow me to change that name. This is going to be concept development. And just hitting enter is going to send me to the next line now. This is going to be subsystem development. And the last one, enter again, is going to be system development. Now for your project, you're probably going to have certain milestones that are assigned to your project or certain phases that have already been defined by your professors, by your administrators. So make sure you go and check those to see what these names should probably be. Notice if I expand this again, there's the old names crossed out in red. I have to make sure I save those changes. There we go. And one other thing you'll notice is these have turned red. And what that means is these have become critical phases, critical tasks, part of the critical path. One of those ways to designate what these are. And what it basically means is that these are the phases and the tasks that are holding up the completion of my project. The things on the critical path are essentially those that must be completed in order to keep those down the road on task. And we'll kind of take a look at those later on in the video. Well, let's look at the other information here. I can come in here and I could change the progress of completion of any of these phases. I'm not going to do that at this time because we're going to add some subtasks to these. And I could also change the start date of any one of these. Let's go ahead and try that now. I'm just going to push these off. Let's see, I'll push this next task into August. Let's push it to the 10th, give ourselves a couple of weeks. And I'll give myself a couple of weeks on this one as well. We're going to push this into August, push this to the 24th, and we'll save those. Alright, now That information there has pushed these off. They're still only 1 day long, which has been set by their duration here and will change later. But because these have been spaced out, now we can actually see that the duration of the whole project is going to take 21 days, and the end date is August 24th, the last day of my last phase. It also means that only this last phase is now marked as critical, because there's several weeks of leeway between concept development, the end of concept development, and the beginning of subsystem development. So I could actually let concept development slide several weeks before it would actually start to make me late on subsystem development and subsequently late on system development. So system development, as long as we begin that phase right now how we've defined it, as long as we begin that phase on time, we should still be able to complete our project by the last day of the project, August 24th. I can actually come in here to the Gantt chart and we'll already see that these have begun to space themselves out along the project. Now notice these are still marked in blue even though they're phases. They won't turn gray until we add some subtasks to those, so let's make sure we do that at this time. I'm going to go back to schedule, and we're just going to follow that same process. I'm going to highlight one of these, and I'm going to add 3 tasks. Add them as subtasks, and let that load. There are our new tasks. I'm just going to do the same on each of these other phases. Alright, and the last one. Alright, again, these tasks are now marked in red because they are all critical to completing system development on time. Now we would want to go through and we would want to rename these, but before I do that, I'm now going to add in the milestones, which I also want. I'm going to add 1 milestone to each of these phases as well. Okay. Okay, now because of the order I did that in, these conveniently all showed up in the order I want to see them in the tree. But it's very common to need to move one of these items, so if I needed to move this milestone up, I just highlight it and use these up or down buttons to move it up and down in the line. There you can see it pop up and pop back down. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's put some names on these. I'm going to name my milestones, and I'm just going to use some milestones that are common in design. This is going to be the PDR, Preliminary Design Review. This one down here is going to be the Critical Design Review. And this last one here is going to be the Manufacturing Readiness Review. And then I would come in here and I can rename these tasks. So if this is concept development, this could be brainstorm concepts. This could be select best candidate and create requirements list. Now whether or not that's the right order, I'm going to leave that to the professors to decide, and I would have to hit save to keep any of those changes, so I'll go ahead and hit save. And you get the idea. On the rest of these we could give them names as well. Moving along, we could also add specific durations to these, so I'm going to come in here and notice I can no longer change the duration of my phase because it's now defined by the duration and start days of each of the tasks. So first things first, I actually want to come down here and I'm going to change the date of my PDR milestone. Also notice milestones don't have any duration. They're considered a one-time thing, so if I just change this start date, and let's see, we're going to move this into August, and I really just want this to be the end of this phase, so I'm going to go ahead and put that on the 9th. And down here, the CDR is going to need to be on the 22nd. We'll put it on the 23rd. And the MRR, we want to put that out far enough, so I'm going to put that, we will put that on September 7th. Alright, September 7th, there we go. I'll go ahead and hit save again. And now that I've saved that, we can also notice that MRR is the last item to be completed as part of this project. So it's the only thing that's really holding things up. Again, it's on the critical path because there's a lot of leeway between August 24th and September 7th to complete the last of this phase. If I go over to the Gantt chart, you'll notice that it's actually starting to take shape. Again, I can expand these menus or just hit expand all, and I can have it highlight actually the critical path, and it's right now just that MRR. Okay, so we need to spread out now. We need to spread out these tasks. So I'm going to go back to schedule. I'm going to make sure these all get spread out. Okay, expand all, edit, and I'm going to add a little bit of duration to each of these. So right now, my concept development is going to take 9 days to complete. So I'm just going to make each of these going to be 3 days long. I'm just hitting 3 and hitting enter, and it jumped me down automatically to this next task. Alright, let's go ahead and save all those. Okay, that's good progress. Now you don't have to save between every change that you make like I'm doing, but it might be good policy just to make sure that you don't lose any information. Okay, now we have these all marked as 3 days long, but they're all still starting on the same day. Now I could move that by hand, I could move their start date to a different day, but I want to do this in a bit more, I think, robust method. I want to add dependencies that essentially are just going to say that each of these tasks need to be completed in order. Notice I'm just using the ID of the task before it. So this one here, actually, I don't want to have a dependency. And this one here, there we go, we're going to start with 2. So 2, that's 3, and so on. I can add dependencies that way, and if I go ahead and save this and jump back over to my Gantt chart, I should actually see that these have now spaced themselves out to define concept development. And there we go. We have it going all the way down through concept development. Now one thing that we should also notice here, the way that my preferences are set up right now, when I'm marking days, it's only really considering business days. So you notice here I have Friday, it skips Saturday and Sunday and jumps to Monday, Tuesday. So that's 1, 2, 3 business days. So even though this is filling up 5 days, it's still only taking up 3 business days. By default, anytime I add a duration, it's going to skip over the weekends. Same thing's happening here. This is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And that's why these task boxes are right now composed of different lengths. You may also have noticed that the duration and the timeline of the phases line up in a weird way for the same reason. Even though the deadline of concept development is placed 2 weeks after the start date, it's still marking the duration as only 9 days because it's skipping over the weekends. Alright, so let's move on. Let's look at some of these other ones. Now, I showed you one way of putting in the dependencies by connecting them on the scheduling chart. There's actually a nice little graphic way to do the same thing. If you notice, when I hover over any of these tasks, these little circles appear, and I can create a dependency just by dragging from the end of one to the beginning of another. You notice it will automatically move that forward so it covers that same 3-day span and keeps that dependency alive. You can do the same thing with the ones down here. Alright, and now I've created those dependencies. But what I have to do now that I've created this in the Gantt chart mode is I have to be able to save these as well. Now the Gantt chart view is a little bit different from some of the other views. It doesn't have a toggle button for edit mode up at the top. So we really have to just come up here and save. Basically what's happening is it's always in edit mode. So the save button is a little bit different. It's this generic one that they use in many of the other apps. So make sure you come in here and save those dependencies that we just created. Alright, now we have those dependencies and they should show up in the schedule view as well. We can expand all, and there we can see them. Alright, now notice the end of this last task is still showing up on September 5th. where the MRR itself is showing up on September 7th. So there's still a little bit of a gap there, which is why it's leaving this critical path at the MRR. So we're still not ending up with a critical path there. Let's see what happens if I come down here and just increase the duration of this task by 2 more days. I'm going to save those changes. And let's go ahead and make sure they update. I'm going to jump back over to the Gantt chart. And let's show the critical path and expand. There we go. Now we can actually see that the critical path is going back through all of the tasks in system development and is breaking right here because we probably still have a day gap between the two of these. Now that's a useful tool for keeping track of what needs to line up in the critical path. Now the critical path, you don't actually have to have that go all the way back to the beginning of your project. It's just keeping an eye on those things that you have to complete on time or risk your project falling behind. That's always going to be dependent on which of these dependencies exist where they actually mesh one right after the other. And that only carries back throughout system development right now. Depending on how much information you have included in here will kind of depend on how far that critical path goes. And it's a useful tool just for identifying those tasks that you really need to keep the closest watch on to make sure they all get completed at the right time to keep yourself on task. Alright, but now with that, we've basically created our Gantt chart for this test project. Now, anytime I can come back here in schedule here and I can edit any of the information on any of these tasks. Let's actually come in here. I'm going to expand all. I'm going to open these. And let's go ahead and add some progress. These first two here are the ones that are apparently should be underway immediately. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to set a certain amount of progress on each of these. Save that change. And let's see what that does in our Gantt chart. Alright, so now we've added some progress. Notice it's automatically updated from these tasks. It's added that progress up into an amount of progress for the phase. So once I complete all 3 tasks in here, that phase progress will go to 100%. And now, if I come back and go into my project view, I can see, alright, I've got some progress has been made. I've got one of my phases that I'm in has already had a late start. So we're already should be working on this phase, which we are now. So we're going to get that one done soon. We look down here, and now it's saying, okay, if you were able to accomplish that much, essentially 30% of that first phase in just this short amount of time, then I should be able to complete the rest in a similar amount of time, which is why this little actual estimated bar has now become so short. Alright, and with that, we've essentially covered the basics of setting up your Gantt chart for the first time. Let's jump into some of the more detailed things that we can do here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come into subsystem development and I'm going to add another task. And this time I'm not going to use this second method that I presented to you. I'm going to come in here and actually say add subtask. It's going to add a task underneath the system development phase. And this pops up this little side menu that lets me set all of these parameters before it actually shows up in my table here. So before we were making it pop into the table and then going back and changing certain features. This time I'm going to actually come in here and create one. So this is going to be in subsystem development. So I'm going to do run final tests. I want to make this the last thing I do in this this phase. So we're going to say run final tests. I'm going to just go ahead and skip over the description. I'll leave the duration at 1 day. Project task, we're just going to leave it there. I'm going to set this task requirement to mandatory. And this time I can actually assign a project role to this task. So I'm going to assign this to the program manager, which is the role that I assigned to myself earlier in this video, to make this task show up under the program manager role. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that feature. Constraint type, now this can just kind of define where it starts. I'm going to say just as soon as possible. And I'm going to put in a dependency to make sure as soon as possible means after the last task, after this T189 task. I don't need to set a constraint date because I've set this to be as soon as possible instead of saying finish no earlier than a certain date. As soon as possible, so that's grayed out. Don't need another calendar. I am the owner of this task because I've created it. And then I can even come down here and I can assign this to a certain person on my team. Now this is where we get the question. I assigned this already a project role. So the question is, why am I now going to assign it to a specific person? And there's a reason for that. Essentially, even though this is assigned under the program manager role, I still have the option to assign it to another member of my team if I need to. If I need to have someone else do it to help out the program manager, even though it should fall under that person's responsibility. The other reason why is I've assigned this a role, but I still haven't assigned it to a specific person. I can assign it to that person, or I can activate the assign by role option, which I'm going to do now. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to go ahead and let that populate. Let's move this up. Oh, need to select just the one, move it up, and there it goes. And now I'm going to assign it a dependency 9. And I can save that. Okay, so now I've put it in line with the rest of my tasks. And now what I can do is I can come in here and change the assignment. Essentially all I have to do is come in here, select the item I want to assign, and I can come down here and say assign, and I can say assign by user, which will pop up that user search bar again. I can pick out a member of my team, or assign by role. And it will automatically find who that project role was assigned to on that task. And I can come in here, that's program manager, I can hit apply, and that will officially be assigned to myself, that I'm going to have to complete that task. Now in order to do that, I had to set the project role for that task, and we didn't do that for any of these that we populated the other way. Well, that's not too difficult. If I come into any of these and right click on them, I can go to properties, and it will pop up that same little box that allows me to pop in here and assign a project role to that task. And there we've assigned that new role to that task, and it can be assigned to me as well. Notice again, when I make that assignment, I can actually select multiple and come in here and say assign by role, which will kind of streamline that assigning process in here. And we'll go over some other ways that we can do that later in the video. Alright, now let's say that I don't like these. I'm going to go ahead and delete the run final tests task. And it's very simple in Enovia. It's a longer process to remove some of the parts that you may have created for your model, but in this you can simply come up here and delete any selected items that we have from here. I can delete. It's going to give me a warning. I say OK, and we can permanently delete that from our list. Okay, now we've basically covered everything we need to know within Enovia for organizing our tasks, but let's go look at just a few more things that we can do in the Gantt chart. First thing here, we have, just looking up at the top here, I have a zoom to fit in. These are just some view buttons. Again, I can expand all. I could also just expand a certain number of levels. So maybe there are some subtasks and things that we've inserted under one of these individual tasks that we don't want to see. I can come up here and just expand one level down, and it would expand all of those. You can of course zoom out, zoom in, and what's really important, print. So we have a print settings page here that's going to help us with printing this Gantt chart. Now Gantt charts in general are notorious for being difficult to print easily on a good sheet of paper. But we'll just come in here and let's pick those items that we actually want to see in this Gantt chart. So we don't need the type, we don't need the ID, I don't need to see a column with the dependencies because they're going to be shown on the plot on the table itself. So I'm actually going to remove most of these. Percent completed, I'm going to leave that in. start, finish, assigning, deviation. Now all of these things you could print. I'm just going to leave % completed in the name for now. Then the next thing we need to do is we need to pick a size, dots per inch. The larger that this number is, the smaller it's going to appear on the page. A good number generally is 300. And I'll go ahead and select print. And it's going to show me that printed view. And there we go. That's how that's going to show up on paper. We can see all the little lines moving down the page with their titles and % complete on each of those tasks moving down. Now one thing to keep in mind is the view that it shows you here depends kind of on how you've positioned your viewpoint here. So generally it's good to say a zoom to fit before printing. Another nice feature is if I actually, once I have printed this, if I go ahead and cancel this, I get this nice print preview view. And this right here is very useful for producing in PowerPoint presentations. You can just get a copy of this image here, put that in a PowerPoint presentation and include that as part of your information when maybe you're meeting with a professor or with your sponsors. So a great way to summarize some of the information you want to show in that way. Okay, and with that, we've covered Enovia as a tool. Let's move on now to some of those widgets that I mentioned earlier that are going to be useful to you in helping you manage your project. Now, I've actually already inserted a couple of these at the bottom of the page here. The three that you really want to look for are found right down here at the bottom. We have a My Projects widget. So if I look for the My Projects widget, that's right here. This is essentially like the My 3D Space widget that's useful for locating your content. But this is just focusing on projects. So I could actually select one of these, and there we go. I've opened it now in Enovia in a separate tab, and there it goes. So just kind of a quick way to jump into one of your projects right there, and I can also see the progress that the project is making. Moving over, I have the Collaborative Tasks widget that we're going to get into a little bit more. That's going to be up here towards the top, right there. This one is a fantastic widget and a must-have if you're managing your project through Enovia. And the last one is the Gantt chart, Project Gantt chart widget. And if you notice, I can try to drag this down in right now. And it's actually going to give me an error. And the reason why is I have two platforms that I have access to, and it needs to know which one. So I just, again, click on this arrow, select that Georgia Tech is the platform I'm on right now, and I can locate it on my page. And this, again, is just kind of an image, summarized image of your Gantt chart, lets you get a nice view of that. So we're going to let that load. There we go. I just have to select the project I want to be visible here. This is going to be my project. It's going to bring that up. There it is. I can just select that, and this is going to be the one that's visible down in here. Now this one functions a lot like 3D Play for viewing parts, but this just lets me get a view of my Gantt chart and work with it a little bit here. I can always make it take up my whole screen and then just get some additional information. Great way to just pop that up and close it down again. And notice it's holding that view that I put it in. And also we can make these as large as we want. But what I really want to look at is my collaborative tasks. I'm going to go ahead and maximize that so we get the best view. Now this is essentially a shortcut to assigning and managing the progress of the tasks that you're working on. Notice it's automatically generated a list for me of all of the tasks that have been assigned to me. And notice not just for our one project. Some of these down at the bottom here were assigned to me when I created this for a different project. So these are all the tasks that I have to worry about right now. And another nice thing is it will automatically also update items from the to-do column into the in-progress column as soon as I assign some sort of % completed to any of those tasks. So if I select this, it'll actually open up and see, there it is, 50% complete, and this is something I can drag from right here to just very quickly jump in and indicate progress that I've made. Hit save on the bottom to update that, and it will update that through my Enovia apps. I can move them around, so if I come down to some of them down here, I can click on this to make the updates, just like it's telling me there. Make new assignments, add another assignment. add a deliverable to this project, put on some attachment, some document that has to do with that, etc. I can, if I close this, I can also come down here and just drag an item over. Now it's saying that it's in progress. I'm working on it. I can open it up there. And now it's in progress. It's going to actually change the maturity from, if I look over here, preliminary maturity. It automatically changes it to in work, and I can start indicating progress on this project as well. So if I come over here to something that's in the to-do box, meaning we haven't started it, and I add on a %complete to this item and save it, it's going to go ahead and just jump over automatically. It is now in work, it has some progress associated with it, and we're moving forward. So this is a fantastic way to just make quick assignments, figure out where you're at, figure out what we're working on, figure out what we've completed, and what might be next on the to-do list. You may even notice I can come over here and change the view by to due date, and it's going to show me, all right, this is due today, this is due tomorrow, these are due sometime in the future. I can view by maturity. That's showing which of these should be started immediately. These are in work right now, in review and completed. I can just look at the ones assigned to me or owned by me. I can look at all of them. So I can even come up here and just very quickly create a task, or like this one here says, I can come to this drop down and just go straight to delete. And I've deleted that project just very quickly. Or again, go to the same thing, hit complete. I can even say assign to myself if I want to take over this project. So there's a lot that you can do just in this widget that's available right on your dashboard, and I can always keep an eye on what's going on with my team using this widget here. All right, and with that, that covers the most useful tools that you'll find in Enovia. As always, all of this information is available on the help pages or in Academy. There's great places to go and look for more help.